how do you apply to law or legal studies abroad? Basically, the US. Okay, so this is how do I apply to Harvard? How do I apply to Stanford? How do I apply to many different universities that of your choice? Are some tips for you. First of all, now there's an institution called the LSAC, LSAC, that you need to send all your paperwork to, which is fantastic because you don't need to go to each university individually and send everything, okay? That's the first thing you need to know. The second tip, I would think, it's very important that you apply to many universities. And I mean, so have your first top 10 universities or 8 universities in the US. Look at the rankings, okay, for this. It's very useful. Second, especially if you're doing a JD. An LLM, you have to do the best, okay? So look at them. Then look at what are the best public universities? Because that's also a choice, and they tend to be a lot less expensive. I'm not saying they're cheap because they're not, but they're a lot less expensive. So you also want to give a shot at those because you might get a scholarship from those as well. And the third thing you want to do is go into each state, and each state sometimes has very good universities. For example, the University of Washington is very good if you want to work in DC. There's a very good university in California as well. There's a very good university in Georgia. So there are local universities that are not as well known. They are not Harvard. No one will know them in the country probably that you come from. But if you want to work there, if you're doing the JD, they're great universities. They get a lot less application from international students. They're looking to get international students in. And everyone will hire you if you go into one of those, or if you do well, of course. So you could actually work in that state, which is great. Remember that you can only work in the state where you take the bar exam, and you are allowed to take the bar exam in general terms only in those states that you did your JD. New York and California are an exception to the rule, okay? The third tip is, why not try for a 2-year JD? At some point, these programs were called accelerated JDs. They stopped being called like that, and I quite agree because I don't know, their reputation didn't go well as they would have thought. So now you can find 2-year JDs for people that have already completed their legal studies in other places and have done very well. And you can find these from University of Duke, Chicago, NYU. It's hard to find somewhere else, but you can find them. But as I named you already, 3 good universities. So think about that. Okay, I know, by the way, the costs, there are some certain costs associated to applying to each university. So it's like $40 or whatever. It's expensive if you're going to apply to a lot of them, but you want to have choices. So if you're going to spend in the end, $60,000 or maybe $50,000 a year, or you're going to get a scholarship for that amount, then really do not stop now because you did not apply. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Another good tip is take the GRE, not the LSAT. Study a JD, then you used to need the LSAT, the legal, standardized test for law, but the LSAT is extremely hard for someone who's a non-native English speaker. I'm bilingual, but I found it completely, I mean, it's extremely hard. You're against time. However, the GRE is so much easier. The GRE, you have a basic math section that you need to know some math. I mean, guys, come on. And on the verbal side, or the language, is so much easier. So for the actual test, try to do the GRE if that's possible instead of the LSATs if they require you to. If you're doing a JD, they usually will require you to do so. And the best universities are currently accepting GREs. So if you go to Harvard, Yale, Stanford, etc., you will find the GRE. So that's amazing news for international students. And no, I think no one has given enough importance to this subject, okay? Because the LSATs were a huge barrier to entry for all international students, okay? It's very hard to compete with US-based because you have to think quickly and you have to think in English quickly. So that presents a problem for us, non-native English speakers. And finally, you need to take a test of English. You can always take the IELTS if you prefer. That's the English version. But I would recommend taking the TOEFL. The TOEFL is why? Because the TOEFL is accepted everywhere, not only in the US. So it's accepted in Canada, it's accepted in the UK. The IELTS used to be better for other reasons. They used to have only a spoken part, but now, no, I mean not only, but they also used to have a part where you had to speak to someone, to actually someone looking you back at you. But now, the TOEFL also has a speaking and hearing part, so it really covers everything. And I would say it's very standard. You can get lots of books. There's tons of classes. If you want some recommendations on how to study for the TOEFL, I can give you some recommendations because it's not the same speaking good English as giving the TOEFL. Not necessarily the same, okay? I would say that. And good luck. If you have any comments, please leave them below. And do not forget to subscribe to my channel. And if this was useful or you want to hear more, please give me a like. Thank you so much.